Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at what a Republican landslide election in 2024 would look like. So presuming that the Republican nominee is President Trump, who has the overwhelming support in the Republican Party and is very influential in the Republican Party, this is what a landslide election in 2024 would look like on the political slash electoral map. So let's just get straight into this. The Democrats would still keep and hold a lot of their safe states. This is because Trump has almost no shot in these states because his base just isn't present here, and Trump wins based on how his base performs. If Trump's base performs and comes out and votes, Trump wins the election. But if they don't, Trump loses. Trump's base just isn't present in a lot of these safe Democratic states, or it's present, but it's just not enough to actually offset the number of Democratic votes in these states. So a lot of these safe Democratic states still stay within the Democratic Party's grasp. Alright, I think that's everything. So let's just start filling in the Republican safe states. These are states that would be safe for the Republican Party, even if this was a normal election year, even if this wasn't a landslide election scenario for the Republican Party. Those states would be Utah, Idaho, Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, and South Carolina, and Alaska. Okay, so these are the safe states for the Republican Party. Let's just start with the states that Trump won in 2020. So in 2020, Trump won Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Iowa. So Trump would have to keep a hold of all of the states that he won in his 2020 election. He would need to hold and keep Ohio, Iowa, Florida, and North Carolina. It is likely that Trump actually keeps these states in a normal 2024 election. If it wasn't a landslide, Trump would probably keep most of these states still. Now let's just get the district out of the way. So in a landslide election year, Trump actually wins the 2nd district of Nebraska. Trump was able to win it in 2016. He called 2016 a landslide. In most electoral terms, it wasn't. 306 electoral votes is nothing to laugh at. It's not a landslide election, and Trump would have to keep his hold in the 2nd district of Maine, which is likely, and it's likely that that happens in a normal 2024 election. Now, the next states that Trump wins is the Rust Belt. So Trump would carry all of these states in a landslide election year. So Trump would have to flip all 3 of these states from the 2020 election, where Biden won all 3. Trump only lost Wisconsin by 0.7%, he only lost Michigan by 3%, and he only lost Pennsylvania by 1.2%. Those are all margins that are doable and able to overcome, and so it would be likely that in a landslide election year, Trump wins all 3 of these states. Now, at this point, he's already won the election. He's at 280 electoral votes. He doesn't need to win any more states to win the election, but remember, this is a landslide election year, and so we're going to give Trump everything that he would get in a landslide election. The next state that Trump wins, he flips Georgia. Whoops, I clicked Alabama. Oh my god, I clicked South Carolina. Georgia. Trump wins the state of Georgia. He only lost Georgia by 12,000 votes. He only lost by 0.3%. And so it is able, and it's very likely, that in a landslide election year, Trump is able to overcome that deficit. However, I think that the Democratic Party will actually expand its popularity and its resources in the state of Georgia. I mean, we have to remember that Georgia went blue on the presidential election, but it also went blue twice in its senatorial elections, in its special elections. Now, it was likely that Raphael Warnock won his seat versus Kelly Loeffler. However, many people didn't expect Jon Ossoff to beat David Perdue. I mean, David Perdue was the incumbent Republican senator. He won his election, unlike Kelly Loeffler, and he was liked. He was a traditional conservative, and he was liked amongst the Georgia public. However, he wasn't able to win his seat against Jon Ossoff, and so it would be difficult for the Republican Party to actually win the state of Georgia in 2024, but in a landslide election year, Trump would definitely win. I mean, 12,000 votes isn't too many, and Trump would be able to overcome that. I'm not too sure how many votes Biden would win by in 2024 if he holds on to the state of Georgia, but in a landslide election year, Trump would have to overcome that deficit, and it's likely that he would. The next state is the state of Arizona. In a landslide election year, Trump would likely win the state of Arizona. It's unlikely that he wins the state of Arizona in a 2024 normal year. However, Arizona is still a traditionally Republican state. It was only won by the Democrats one time in the 2020 election, but since then, it hasn't been won by a Democratic nominee. for a very long time, and Trump would just have to win the traditional Republican base in the state of Arizona. He won it in 2016. It's unlikely he wins it in a normal 2024 scenario, but he would have to win it in a landslide election year, and he would probably win it in a landslide election year. And the last state I will give President Trump, and the last state to conclude this video, is the state of Nevada. Biden only won Nevada by about 2%. It was about 2.4%, which is something that's doable, especially since the margin here was only separated by about 30,000 votes, which is something that Trump can overcome. Which is why, in a landslide election year, I actually give Trump the state of Nevada. And what this means is that, please register, there we go. The Republicans get So what this means is that the Republicans get 313 electoral votes to the Democratic Party's 225 electoral votes. Now, if this unlikely situation were to occur, it would be a landslide election, but if we compare this to the Democratic Party's landslide election, which is a video, if I haven't released it yet, I will be releasing it soon, this is very marginal when compared to a Democratic Party's landslide election, because the Democratic Party gets over 410 electoral votes in its landslide election. And unfortunately, I can't actually give Trump any of the other states on this map that are blue, because those states have all been won by point margins that are just out of reach for the Republican Party, even in a landslide election year. I mean, these are the most states that I can give to President Trump. The only other state I can give to President Trump is the state of Minnesota, but it's unlikely that even in a landslide election year, Trump wins the state of Minnesota. It's difficult for me to give Minnesota to the Republican Party, especially because Minnesota was the only Democratic state when Reagan won his 1984 landslide election. And so Minnesota is a Democratic state at heart, and its soul is Democratic. So it's difficult for me to give that to the Republican Party, especially because it was won by the Democrats by about 7 to 8%. In a landslide election year, maybe Biden wins the state by maybe 2%, maybe 3%, but he still wins the state, which is why I can't give the state of Minnesota to the Republican Party. And it's unlikely that any of the other states that are highlighted in blue can actually flip for the Republican Party. The only other state that is even debatable is New Hampshire, because New Hampshire was the closest state that voted Democratic in the 2016 election. But since then, in the 2020 election, New Hampshire went pretty solidly for the Democratic Party, and so it's difficult for me to give New Hampshire to the Republicans. But even if I did, that's only 4 electoral votes. Compare that to the Democratic Party's landslide election, where the Democratic Party won over 410 electoral votes. In fact, they won 413 electoral votes, which would be truly a landslide election. But this is what a Republican landslide election looks like. This is the best that the Republicans can do under reasonable circumstances and reasonable scenarios. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and goodbye.